Welcome to the Innovation Squadcast. If you are looking for a podcast about instructional strategies enhanced by technology, you came to the right place. In our conversations, we will talk with tech experts, share ideas and strategies to help you build your toolbox with tools that you can use in your class immediately.
Welcome to the Innovation Squadcast. Thanks for making us part of your educational PD journey, where we explore innovative approaches to education that empower both educators and students. In today's episode, we are diving into the fascinating world of Genius Hour, a concept that gives students dedicated time to explore their passions and interests. Whether you're interested in implementing a long-term Genius Hour project spanning several weeks, or a shorter version condensed into just a couple of class periods, we've got you covered. Join us as we discuss the benefits, challenges, and practical strategies for bringing Genius Hour to your classroom and fostering a culture of curiosity, creativity, and self-directed learning. Let's unlock the genius within every student together. But before we get started, let's pause for this week's Tech Tip. This week's Tech Tip is found inside of Screencastify, which we use to record our podcast. And just as a way for you to, you let your students, which is a free extension for our students to use on their Chromebooks, and things that you can do with it, especially when it comes to exporting it. So if you wanted to create like a video for their Genius Hour project, they can, again, create it right here in Screencastify, export that as an MP4 and share it with you. If they want to create a podcast and just want audio, you can export as an MP3. We can download files, you can make GIFs, you can get embed codes, just ways that you can leverage Screencastify as a great tool for students to be able to demonstrate their mastery on whatever it is that you want to do, and especially using a Genius Hour project with podcasting or video creation. Hope everybody enjoyed that tech tip. I am Jimmy Kate.
I'm Pam Hubler.
And we are Innovative Learning Coordinators in Berkeley County School District. And we thought it'd be a good idea to maybe just open this up. Teachers may be looking for something at the end of the year, post-testing. I know I always like to sneak a little extra Genius Hour project in at the end after some testing was done. And I noticed when I did it, it was very eye-opening to see that when you gave your students passion about something, they were very committed and very dedicated. And I remember it opened my eyes. They're not lazy. Sometimes they only really get into what they're passionate about. And I think we're all a little bit guilty of that from time to time as well. So, and I'll never forget, I had this student, and she was an artist, and she did well in my class, but it was a struggle, and it wasn't definitely something that came naturally to her. But we did this Genius Hour project at the end, and she decided she's going to paint. She took because part of my requirement had to have 5 IDs in it. So she took 5 of these paintings and basically recreated them in this mural that she created, and they were amazing. But she brought this canvas in. This canvas was huge. She brought it in every day. And the focus and the dedication and the commitment in doing something that I could never do in a million years, was eye-opening. That when you let them have that freedom to be passionate about something, I think that they run free. So it's pretty cool to see. So
I know when I first learned about Genius Hour in general, that's one of those, because I wasn't a great student, because I was not interested in a lot of the things we were learning, because I was that art kid. I liked art. I liked doing anything creative. And that's not something I was generally integrated into school when I was actually in school. Yeah. So that it does give them the passion and they get to shine in a way that they don't normally shine. Absolutely, if you're not a good student, sometimes it is the best for them, because you get to show what you're good at.
And you can attach it to standards, and you can, there's ways to do it. I guess we should, what is a genius? What would be like the definition you would give out as a Genius Hour project? What would be the best way to kind of sum it up?
I think I would say the Genius Hour is that time that you get to give kids to use their personal interests to show either what they've learned, or just to be able to share with their classmates something that they think is important to them. And it also gives them, like you said, that student ownership and just, being able to be passionate about something in school. But
Yeah.
That's not probably a very good summary, but
Yeah,
John Spencer has a great one.
Yes. Yeah, we've got resources in the show notes, so
Yes.
definitely check those out, videos to John Spencer and all the great things that he's taught us about Genius Hour Project. And I think that's a great definition of it. It's the idea of, again, giving students the ability, and this is John Spencer's term, geek out on something
Yes.
that they're passionate about, but again, attach it and tie it to some sort of standard that you have, you know, and this is probably a lot easier, and like with writing standards, being able to, you know, give me a whatever writing standard that you want to pick, but then let's, you know, find something they can geek out about. But you know, as a history teacher, I was able to, you know, use ways for them to do that as well. And so, you know, so we talk about, and you've already talked about it, like the benefits of Genius Hour, talking about encouraging passion. You just mentioned that, you know, exploring interests, fostering motivation. You know, the kids are not tired of learning. They want to learn. They just, you know, when they really get passionate about something, it's really great to see them have that passion in something. And I think the idea of promoting inquiry as well. You know, we want to teach some 21st century skills, and I think that Genius Hours teach that more than anything else. They get curious about something. They critically think, you know, and those are all things that we love as well. So
I think with the inquiry part of it, that's the thing that kids, especially if they're used to just getting information from their teachers, that part of it they do at home.
Yes.
Like, hey, how do I know how do I learn how to do this? And they use YouTube, they use all those things, but they never think about that as being that's learning.
Absolutely.
Like, that's how you learn things.
Yes.
So knowing how to ask questions, and now with AI being such a big part of things, asking questions is huge, because you're only gonna get the information out of it if you ask proper questions.
Exactly.
So
yeah, and I think it's important that this isn't a free for all, and I think teachers understand that. We'll talk a little bit about implementation a little bit later on, but yeah, there's structure to it that's important. But you know, you talked about it, ownership and creativity, right? The fact that, you know, now they've got the ability to, you know, create something that they want, and then another thing that, you know, in creativity and ownership, and kind of goes along with ownership, is that you know, when we were doing these Genius Hour projects, this was something that they look forward coming to school for. You know, that, you know, they were as soon as it was Genius Hour time, I mean, they got excited. The buzz picked up in the room. You know, so I thought that was a really cool thing to see as well. So.
How did you introduce it when you introduced it to your kids?
So, you know, it was one of those things I did. We're going to talk about like a longer version or shorter version.
Right.
You know, the first time I did it, we did a shorter version. It was kind of something that I stumbled upon after testing, you know, and it was like, you know, we had AP testing, EOC testing, and then we had like about a week and a half after. And then that's when I saw some pretty cool things. And then I started, you know, building it up longer. But, you know, the biggest thing is that it had to be something that they're interested in, but it had to also, in some way, show U.S. history. And so that where maybe sometimes the things would get, you know, left behind. But just to show you an example of how it worked, I had a kid that was interested in video game creation. And so he created this 1920s video game where it was like this little character had to go into speakeasies and was like busting people because they were breaking the prohibition laws. And then had Harlem Renaissance in there as one of the scenes of the video game. And yeah, so there was ways, you know, I had Minecraft done, we had art, we had people that would do podcasts or YouTube channels, or so there had to be some element of U.S. history for my particular one. But and then another time that I did it, I kind of gave them a little bit more freedom to kind of go where they wanted to go. And like one kid did like the history of sports, which I thought was really cool. But then he was able to attach like, you know, civil rights issues of like Jackie Robinson and Muhammad Ali with the protests of the 60s, and showing how sports was kind of a mirror or reflection of society in ways. And so those are ways that they were able to kind of implement and bring in some of that U.S. history, but still something that they were passionate about. So
that's cool.
Yeah. So, you know, engagement, like I said, they were super engaged. They're super enthusiastic about doing Genius Hours. So that's, again, another one of the benefits. And then like we use it a lot for, you know, reflection and self-reflection. And I think anytime that you can, you know, the research is very strong on self-reflection and the power that self-reflection has. And I think, you know, as teachers, we self-reflect all the time on lessons and how they are doing. And I think they get students to be able to self-reflect on their own things that they've created is a powerful thing as well. As I think building in an element of self-reflection into your Genius Hour is pretty powerful as well.
Yeah.
And let them kind of self-assess themselves and how they did based off of some form of rubric. So,
and that's another thing that I don't think is always integrated in the classroom, because it's you take a test or things like that,
right.
and you have answers. So there is a right or wrong answer, where the reflection on things like this might be, how do I improve this? Or what was great about this,
right.
and what could I do better?
Sure.
So there's, again, a lot of questioning and reflection.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's like, going back to the idea of assessment, for learning or assessment of learning. Right. And I think that a passion project can be an assessment for learning, that they can, once they have that assessment, then they're going to learn from what they've gone through. And I think that's sometimes more powerful than having that assessment of learning, which is a snapshot of a small period of time without any kind of element of growth or ability to get better. And I think that's, I think we want all of our students to become the best versions of themselves. And this is one way to help them do that. So.
Yeah, those work and life skills, they're important.
Yes, they are. So if you're looking at implementing them, let's give you we're going to talk about some implementation tips, and then we're also talk, because we did the benefits. Now we're going to talk about some examples of, kind of the long versus the short, but some, implementation tips. And I think we kind of mentioned that earlier, clear expectations, communicate the purpose, the goals, the guidelines. I highly recommend a rubric that the students can, refer back to, so that they know that they're meeting those expectations. The more that they can reflect and the more that they can improve on them, the more learning that's going to take place. So.
Right. And then providing that structure, because it can be a free-for-all, but it's not something that generally you start with.
Right.
Because without the structure and examples and things like that, sometimes, especially for some reason, I don't know what it is, but if you have they have a harder time with this than some of your other students. But, it might be a little different, but so the structured support is.
Yes, absolutely. Because, it can be a little overwhelming for students at first, and it's okay to let them sit in that overwhelming sometimes. And I know that's hard for us as teachers. Yes. And I would, sit back and let them struggle through it a little bit as well. And so that's a good, it's definitely a great thing. And encouraging diverse topics is another way to, encourage them to really get into something that they're passionate or curious about. And then make sure you have, I think, dedicated time is important as well. Especially when we get into the long versus the short version. If you're doing that long version, sometimes it can get lost, but you have really got to really dedicate time. And, shout out to Miss Majeski and Miss Feller and Miss Courtney and all my wonderful teachers at Barrington Middle. They're really the ones that got me into seeing Genius Hour and what it could be. They invited me in to help kind of, tweak it up a little bit. And we introduced TED Talks into their version. Instead of sitting through a presentation, the kids actually had to create a TED Talk style presentation, and that really, I think, kicked it up a notch. And so far it's been really, really great project. And they did a thing at our Innovation Summit. They're going to will share their presentation with us, but shout out to them and everything they did. But they were really great at dedicating time that was scheduled, and they really put a focus and an interest on it, and it really became a big part of, and something that I think the students look forward to going into the 8th grade there at Barrington Middle. So.
Yeah, when I was an instructional coach at Daniel Island, that's one of the things some of the teachers would try and do, and it was especially after testing and having the kids have something to look forward to also. Yep. And then, you have your required things you have to do, but then knowing at the last 20 minutes of class or whatever it might be, that if they know all week that they have that time to work on their project and it's something they want to do, it's easier to get through everything else. And the end of the year is hard.
Yep, absolutely.
For everybody.
Yeah. And then if you're talking about implementation tips, it's important to offer them resources and tools and thinking about, especially if there's tech involved. We'll talk about kind of a no tech version, a little bit later, especially. But also being able to, let the students formulate the questions, let them conduct their own research, teach them how to analyze information and come up with their own conclusions. And I think that's important to, format it and structure it so that they have the resources that they need to be successful, but also make sure that they're doing that curation of information and really getting into how they can learn something that they're passionate about. And that's, again, teaching them how to learn is a very important, probably the most important skill that I think that you could have, because no matter what, at some point you're going to have to learn something. Right. And so, anytime you can have that ability to know how how I learn, where the struggles come in. That's always important as well.
And then the promoting collaboration.
Yes,
I mean, just encouraging that collaboration with the kids, their peer feedback. That's so important. And they really do respect the feedback more from each other. I mean, but it is something you have to practice.
Absolutely.
Because it's hard to take.
It's very hard to take feedback,
especially when it's something you thought was fabulous. They're like, oh, you might want to change this. But that is a huge life skill.
That's another, probably underrated skill that I think we all could use probably even more help at. But teaching them how to take and receive peer feedback, how to give peer feedback, can be a part of this as well. So not just, you can encourage collaboration. I remember I had students who were both interested in something, and they basically created this whole series of podcasts throughout the whole 9 weeks that were about their topic, because they were both interested and passionate about this one topic. So they collaborated. But then you also have the collaboration of, getting that peer feedback and then teaching students how to do that. That's a very, very important skill.
And I know sometimes they do want to work on things by themselves, but that's one of the things John Spencer noticed, that he actually wanted to push kids into actually working together.
Right.
Not just always working by themselves, because there are those students that they just want to work on it all by themselves. Right. But you do have to kind of encourage the collaboration and group work.
Yes. And then showcase them. I think it's important that, we talk about launching to an authentic audience all the time. And I think this is the perfect opportunity to make sure that you find ways to launch this to a bigger audience. The more you can get people seeing what these students are doing, the more that they're going to take ownership, the more buy-in that they're going to have. If they know that this is going to be to the whole school or to the whole grade level, or to, if we bring in parents or community members, anytime you do that, I think you have a much better product.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. And they might, if you don't tell them that ahead of time,
they
might want to change what they were doing.
I remember seeing it when we first came up with the TED Talk idea, because I was reading the book, Shift to Student Led. And, the teachers asked me, we want to make the presentations a little bit different in the spring than we saw in the fall. Cause we've all sat through presentations and they can get rough. And so I said, and I was reading the book and it talked about the TED Talk thing. And I'm like, well, great, let's do the TED Talk thing. And then so I come in and I modeled this TED Talk and, showed what it should look like. And then the students, once they realized that's what they were doing, they were immediately changing their topic.
Right.
And it was like, that's interesting. And I was like, I wonder. So then I, met with the teachers and kind of reflecting upon why that is, because they weren't passionate about that. They picked something they thought would be easy to do, easy to find research on. Now that they know that I'm going to be giving this TED Talk in front of my class, this wasn't just going to be a Google slide presentation that I could kind of work my way through. They immediately started changing their project.
Yeah, they have to be passionate about it.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty fascinating and pretty eye-opening as well. So let's get into kind of like long Genius Hour project, short Genius Hour project. And specifically what we're talking about is length of time, right? A long Genius Hour project would be something that you're going to build into a semester probably, which was what they do at Merrington Middle. Again, ample time to really dive in, dedicated time every Friday, I think is what they do there for to work on this particular project. Really get in depth, conduct multiple research, have multiple sources, really dive into it. And I think that's going to allow for the outcome to be a lot different. And I think you can expect different outcomes. You can expect the TED Talk or, multiple podcasts or YouTube channel or something like that. But short ones I think are just as powerful, and especially if you're hearing this and I was thinking, what am I going to do the last couple of weeks? Well, this is one that you can do.
Right. Especially short ones. I feel like they're easier to try.
Yes. If it's your first time.
You can just kind of get your feet wet with it. The kids get an idea of the structure, and then depending on how they react to that, then the more you can add it into your class.
Right. And you're going to learn. I know, the first time I did it was a short one.
Yes.
It was something that I was like, what are we going to do? And it turned out great. And then I started implementing it until the semester as we went through. So we're talking about short. You can do it in a couple days if you really want to. Or again, I think I did like a week, maybe 2 weeks, really to allow them to get into it. But definitely condensed timeline. They're going to have to be a little more focused, a little more targeted. You may have to budget a little bit more time. Especially if it's after testing and they can have that full class period for a couple of weeks. That's a pretty significant amount of time that they can really explore. Get into the limited time frame. Again, it doesn't have to be tech, right? We talked about like no tech, versions of this, especially if Chromebooks are getting picked up here soon. get in the library. There's books, and that's not a bad thing.
Right.
Let them pick some books, something that they're passionate about. There's plenty of books in our media centers that they're going to be passionate about. And then they can create a hands-on project. They can do, artistic endeavors. They can do other types of research. They're still going to be, I think, learning the skills. You're still going to be getting the same benefits. So there are no tech versions. So they're allowed to open books and read them. So don't be afraid.
That's with the no tech. I mean, that's one of those things. If they want to do research, if they're really passionate about this, a lot of them will do it at home. They'll do the research, gather materials, and all that. So that way, when they are in class, they can work on all the things that they already kind of curated together for it.
That's another thing that I noticed about like the Genius Hour project. Again, it's something students want to do.
Yes.
When they want to do something, they're going to do it outside of school. They're going to come in the morning. They're going to come in after school. They're going to work on this because it's something that they want to do. It's a priority in their life, and it's something that they're excited about, and you're going to see much better products. So yeah, the short one works, I think, just the same. Definitely got to, again, you may not quite get the you're not going to get obviously a podcast series like it did, but they could do one podcast on it. They could do one, YouTube video. They can create whatever it is, and just a little smaller version. Maybe instead of a longer TED Talk, they could do a short TED Talk. So there's lots of different ways that they can incorporate those same kind of, thing. Let them choose how they're going to demonstrate what they've learned about something that they're passionate about, using whatever skill that it is that you want them to demonstrate. And I think that's going to be, as long as you kind of stick to that and then give them some kind of framework, I think you're going to see some pretty amazing projects that they create.
Definitely. And I linked to the show notes. There's a folder called Genius Hour that has a video for Genius Hour for students, like one that John Spencer created that you could play for students. And then there's also one that's like a teacher explanation. So if you're listening to this and you're still kind of confused as to what we're talking about, those are great resources. And then he also has a document called The 5 Biggest Mistakes I Made with Genius Hour and How I Fixed It.
Nice.
So he goes through basically what he learned as he's doing it with his class. So you can get a lot out of those three items on our show notes.
Yes. So yeah, definitely check out the show notes for resources. There's tons of links and different resources there that you can find. There's links to the podcast video if you were just listening and want to check out the video. There's links to the tech tip video if you like the tech tip and want to go check that out, you can. And then there's also a link to the Innovation Squadcast. So we've got this episode and one more for this school year. Yeah. So, and then the Unified Talent for this year will end at the end of May. So basically we got to the end of May to do as many episodes as you get. Remember, every 2 episodes, you get 1 hour of renewal credit. Don't forget to subscribe to YouTube or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts to get notifications on new episodes. And we want to hear from you. Next year, we're going to need new topics. We're going to need you to be on the podcast. We're going to try to incorporate, I think I like the guests that we're getting. Yes. I like hearing from teachers more. So we really want to incorporate that as well. So,
and if anybody wants to use Genius Hour here at the end of the school year, like reach out to your ILC.
Absolutely, yes.
We can come help you if that just sounds super stressful to you and you don't want to jump in by yourself. Reach out. We'll be more than happy to help.
Yeah, reach out to us. We'll sit down. We'll brainstorm. We'll come up with a plan and help you get that going.
Yes,
so
definitely.
We'd love to help with that. So,
yes.
All right. Well, thanks everyone. Pam, thanks for being here. Thank you for listening. Until next time. Bye.
Bye.